They got something set up there. I don't know what it is, but they've dumped a lot of dirt, and there's a lot of fun things to do on your bike through there. So I don't know if that's the pump track or.
I think they do jumps and they do.
Yeah,
all
they do.
kinds of
They
stuff.
all kinds of crazy stuff out there. It's really cool.
That's cool.
Yeah, saw a dad with his little girl, and they were riding around
This side of the bridge?
right under the bridge.
Really?
Yeah, looks like they dumped a bunch of dirt, but it's nice.
We'll call our meeting to order tonight. Renata, if you could do the roll call, please.
Gookin,
Here.
McEvers,
Here.
Wood,
Here.
English,
Here.
Evans,
Here.
Miller.
Here.
Okay, so let's rise. For our invocation, we have Pastor Aaron Rickner with the Cause Church with us.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. I'm going to pray. Lord Jesus, we come to you now and we give you thanks for this moment that we have together as we join our hearts together, our faith together. We thank you for the beautiful city that you've put us in. And God, we're reminded that even in uncertain times, God, your word is certain. Your promises are certain. And we pray now that you would give us confidence, even in the middle of what maybe feels like a bit of a crisis. And God, that you would give us strength. You'd give us wisdom. God, you'd give us courage where we need courage. And God, would you give us once again empathy to put ourselves in the shoes of others. Maybe sometimes in the seemingly insignificant gestures, God, it goes such a long ways to stop and pause and think of others. And God, I pray now in the name of Jesus for wisdom for our leaders, for our mayor, for council members. God, they would make decisions according to your plan and your purpose and in your strength. God, thank you for your grace and your love. And in the mighty name of Jesus, I pray. Amen.
Amen.
And amen.
What do you lead us in the pledge, please?
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
As we all know, we're having a bit of a different meeting tonight with a lot of people zoomed in from all parts of the city. And so there'll probably be a few bumps in the road, but we will try to put on as normal a meeting as possible tonight. So Dan, if you start us off, we have an amendment to the agenda tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to make a motion to amend the agenda, which is to add item I under other business, item 5, authorization of the police department application and acceptance of a Department of Justice formula allocation grant for $103,457 emergency appropriations for coronavirus health response and agency operations, as funds have recently become available, and this was unknown at the time the agenda was set.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion on that?
No.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Motion carried. So we will go on to public comment, and anyone in the audience that wishes to make public comment will have those identified from the booth. I guess, Renata, they're supposed to do something called raising your hand. I don't know if that's physically raising their hand or pushing a magic button. So whatever they do, so we will see if the booth has anyone that wishes to give public comment. Any public comments tonight?
If I could just clarify.
No public comments at this time.
So when they're in the Zoom meeting app, at the bottom of the screen, there should be reactions, or off to the side where it lists meeting participants. There's a couple reaction, they look like little emojis, and you should be able to raise your hand there. It's a little blue hand wave.
Okay, so we will go out again to see if we see a little blue hand wave. Do we see any little blue hand waves?
I have one from Councilman English.
Okay.
Okay, Councilman English, you're up.
I was just testing.
Okay, Dan, you passed the test.
Okay.
Okay. You look good on the big screen. You have a future. So any other public comment? Okay, so we will move on. I do have a proclamation, and this is the Week of the Young Child, and I believe we have Beth Oppenheimer. Beth, are you out there? Beth is out there somewhere. So I'm going to
There she is.
welcome, Beth. So I'm going to read the proclamation. Whereas the Idaho Association of Education of Young Children and other local organizations, in conjunction with the National Association for the Education of Young Children, are celebrating the Week of the Young Child, April 11th to the 17th, 2020. Whereas these organizations are working to improve early learning opportunities, including early literacy programs that can provide a foundation of learning for children in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. Whereas teachers and others who make a difference in the lives of young children in Coeur d'Alene deserve thanks and recognition. And whereas public policies that support early learning for all young children are crucial to young children's futures, therefore I, Steve Widmeyer, Mayor of the City of Coeur d'Alene, do hereby proclaim the week of April 11th through April 17th of 2020 as Week of the Young Child. So welcome, Beth. You're on the big screen here. Do you have a little bit of a message for us tonight?
I do. Just first of all, thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of the council for proclaiming next week as Week of the Young Child. You're joining about 25 other cities across Idaho in making this proclamation. So thank you so much, especially during these crazy times that we're having. Just wanted to give a brief overview of Week of the Young Child. This is an annual celebration that nationally states and cities and municipalities are celebrating across the country. And each day of the week, there's a different theme. And so we're doing activities. Typically, we have celebrations in our parks and in our libraries and in our schools and things like that to celebrate that. But due to the times that we have right now, we're going to encourage families who are home with their children to engage in activities with their young children. Monday, for instance, is Music Monday. And that's a time where we can encourage singing and dancing and creating music together. It really builds early math and literacy skills when we're doing these activities. Tuesday is Tasty Tuesday, so we're encouraging families to make meals with their families or snacks, or create your own snack, whatever that might look like. Wednesday is Work Together Wednesday, and that's a time to really celebrate everyone working together. And of course, during this time in our communities, everyone's working together to get through and navigate the experiences that we're having right now. Thursday is Artsy Thursday, and that is a time to be really creative with your children and do some sort of art project. My mom the other day was telling me that some kids in her neighborhood were painting rocks. And so they were painting rocks and leaving them in fun little places in their neighborhood. And I thought that might be a good activity that some families can do. And then we finalize it with Family Friday. And during this time, I know a lot of young children are home with their families more so than ever. But it's really just a time to recognize the family and to celebrate with one another. Most importantly, this is a time to recognize our young children, and especially those who are working with and caring for our young children, our child care providers right now. And I will tell you, the city of Coeur d'Alene does an amazing job with your child care system. And I truly want to thank you for that. And our child care providers are really struggling right now. Having to stay open and serve our essential workers. Some are having to close because of their enrollment's low or because of safety, but now's the time to really recognize and celebrate everyone who's working and caring for our youngest children, especially our families. So thank you again for this proclamation, and I'm happy to stand for any questions that you might have or anything like that.
Any member of the council have any questions for Beth? I just wanted to thank you, Beth, for the very important work that you do and all of the people that are working with our kids out there during this very trying time, but we'll get through it, and we're grateful for all you do.
All right. Well, thank you so much again, Mr. Mayor.
All right. Thank you.
Okay.
So we'll move on to announcements. Is there any member of the council that has announcement? We'll first go to our council Zoomers out there. Any Zoomer in the audience of the council have any announcements tonight?
Mr. Mayor, I have a couple announcements.
All right, Amy?
All right, I have some announcements from our friends at the Kroc Center. And the first is the Kroc employees are all still employed and operating, even though the Kroc Center's operations, as we are familiar with, are closed at this time. So they're continuing to work regularly with Panhandle Health, the Post Falls Food Bank, and CAP and Kootenai County EOC. They're also working on, let me see here. Well, they're working on making masks. So they're accepting donations of cotton and flannel fabric, and they're distributing masks all over the community. And they just donated to Lake City Center for their Meals on Wheels volunteers. So they supplied them with 55 masks. Their services are in full swing, and so you can learn more about that on their website, as well as a jam-packed agenda of virtual exercises. So their website's croccda.org.
All right. Thank you, Amy. Appreciate that. Any other member of council have anything? Any member here in the audience? Woody?
Oh, I was at the park today, and guess what? Dicey is living in the city park, and it is so cool. Remember when that washed up on the
Yeah.
beach many years ago? They did a great job. People are standing around laughing and having their picture taken. Pretty cool. Pretty cool. Way to go, Doug, Bill and the gang over there in parks.
Any other members of the council have anything else tonight? I just wanted to thank Woody for all of his work that he's doing, and all of the folks at the Lake City Senior Center who are stepping up to the plate and providing meals for our seniors. And you're just doing a fantastic job, as well as the team at the Lake City Senior Center. So thank you very much for doing that, a very important job. Appreciate that.
You gave me that job. Remember that.
Yeah, that's right. So I have one piece of business. I would like to appoint Jim Windish to the library board, if we could get a motion on that.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move for a motion to approve the consent calendar as presented, including Resolution 20-022.
Motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion on the consent calendar? Roll call, please. Renata?
Wood,
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
Miller,
Yes.
McEvers,
Yes.
Googan,
Yeah.
English.
Yes.
Motion carried. We will start our business tonight. That we have resolution number 20-023, approval of agreement with Road Products, Inc. for the 2020 chip seal project. Chris Bosley.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Sorry for the drab background. I thought the blank background would look good, but now I feel like I'm in a mug shot. So I come before you tonight or through your screen tonight, to ask you for approval of the 2020 chip seal project. We had 2 bidders who completed their bids and submitted them to the city. They were Road Products, Inc. and Poe Asphalt. And I will attempt to show you the areas that we are going to chip seal here. So hopefully everyone can see that now. So this is in the Pine Hill subdivision. You can see the blue illustrates the areas that we'd like to chip seal, and you can see like dark streets that we had already done in that area. So what we were trying to do is just finish up some of the areas that we had already been into. Let me go to the next slide. And then this is our major street that we're looking at doing this year. We've been trying to do one arterial each year. Last year we did Hanley Avenue over in Coeur d'Alene Place. This is 4th Street from Best Avenue up to Dalton. And then we have this little piece with Miners Loop and Sutter's Way. I believe this is called Prospector's Ridge. And then this is where the bulk of the chip sealing will take place. And we did a lot of crack sealing last year to prepare for this. So this is the Hoffman Hills subdivision area, including Margaret and going up to, not including Dalton, but from 4th to 15th and Margaret to Dalton. So oh, there we go. Sorry, just had to stop sharing my screen. So what I'm asking is for you to approve awarding this contract to Road Products, Inc. at a price of $694,380.20 when we had a $750 budget for that item. And I would stand or sit for any questions.
That'd be $750,000 budget, right, Chris?
Yes, did I misspeak?
You said dollar, but I think we knew where he came from.
Yes, $750,000.
There you go, yeah. Council questions for Chris?
I have a couple.
Woody?
Chris, just a couple. So Road Products, I haven't heard of them before. Are they local?
They are local. I believe they're out of Spokane. They actually did our chip seal project last year.
They did, okay. When it comes to priorities, most of this seems to be north of the freeway. Is that just an evolution of time and the age of the streets and the subdivisions, or what kind of a quick synopsis goes into that, how you prioritize where you're going to do this?
Some of those streets were ones that we chose because they weren't too far gone. If some streets, if they get to a certain deterioration, then a chip seal is just wasting money on them. Eventually, what we're trying to do is we have a street saver program that rates all of our streets for us once we put in the visual ratings into them. And we're working hard to finish that up this year so we can go with a more calculated analysis of that. But right now, it was just looking at areas that seemed appropriate to finish this with.
Okay. And my last question is, when you're doing 4th Street, are you going to do best intersection, or do you go to the north of the intersection and start it?
I don't know if that had been decided, but we can certainly look at that because it's just a little bit of a change in quantities, so we can always add a little bit or remove a little bit.
Okay, thank you.
Other council questions for Chris? If there isn't any more questions, we'd be looking for council action.
Mr. Mayor, I'd make a motion that we approve resolution number 20-023, approving an agreement with Road Products, Inc. for the 2020 chip seal project.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay. Seeing no further discussion, roll call, please, Renata.
Evans?
Yes.
Miller?
Yes?
McEvers?
Yes.
Gookin?
Aye.
English?
Yes.
Wood?
Yes.
Motion carried. Thank you, Chris. We'll move on to resolution number 20-024, and this would be to reject the bids of the police substation tenant improvement project at 214 North 3rd Street and direct staff to negotiate an agreement. And we have Captain Brainerd with us tonight. Welcome.
Mayor, council members, thank you for the opportunity to bring this matter before you this evening. Back in May of 19, Chief Lee White brought a request for authorization to occupy the space at 214 North 3rd Street and use impact fees for construction costs to turn that space into a police substation. At that time, when we came forward with that request, it was estimated that the construction cost would be between $95 and $110 a square foot. Those bids went out, or that project went out for bid in March. It closed last Wednesday, April 1st, and we received one responsive bid from Geno Construction, and the base bid amount was more than double what we had originally estimated, in the amount of $220,000. So this evening, I'm here to suggest that the mayor and council reject the bid and allow staff to enter into negotiations with Geno Construction to try to establish a price point that fits more within our budget. The financial analysis, again, we had originally estimated that this project would cost us right around $100,000. The base bid that we received from General Construction is $220,000, and then with 3 add alternates, that jumped up to $268,600, which again is more than 2.5 times the amount that we had originally estimated. And instead of the $95 to $100 or $110 per square foot, the base bid comes in at about $263 per square foot, with the 3 add alternates right at about $321 per square foot. So we were a little surprised by that information. So this evening, we are requesting that the council should reject the General Construction bid and again allow staff to enter into negotiations for a contract with General Construction to get those prices down. I would stand for any questions you may have.
And Captain Brainerd, once you go back and do that negotiation, anything then would come back again to council?
Yes, sir.
Dan?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Captain, what drove up the price? I mean, you obviously did the research and you thought you knew how much it would cost. So
Yes, sir.
what was it that pushed it over? Was it, generally, or was it anything specific?
We don't have those answers for you yet. We're working, the city administrator, myself, and the architect, Scott Cranston, are working to schedule a meeting with General Construction to try to get those answers, to try to determine whether it was the electrical, whether it was the HVAC, what particular portion of the project was so much higher than what we had expected.
It would help to know that if you want to, renegotiate or get into the details and find out. I mean, that would be good data.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions from any council members? Kiki?
Excuse me. I was just looking at this and wondering if it's possible to reject the bid and rebid the entire project possibly later. I'm thinking that's a great location when we have a really, really busy summer, and that seems like it would have made the need to have that substation finished earlier. But have you considered putting this off for a little while? Is it possible to do that and then possibly rebid it when some construction jobs and projects stabilize a little bit?
Well, based on the information that we get from General Construction, hopefully later this week, we'll be able to determine whether we are able to negotiate that down to a reasonable amount. And if not, then I would defer to the city administrator and our legal staff to determine if that's an option.
So we don't have that as an option today, to just reject the bids and rebid it at a later date?
Do we have that answer from Troy?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Miller, yes, that would be an option. The challenge as you are looking at that is we can't be comfortable that we got the right number with only one bid. Had we gotten more bids, we may have been more comfortable with the fact that we had missed it on the estimate. But again, we're pushing 835 square feet, looking at all of the building surrounding it. So it's basically a tenant improvement. So we would like to almost work as a construction management opportunity with Gino and see what it is they have in their bid, and maybe they added something that we did not anticipate.
So I'm sorry, so once you find out what the details are in the Gino bid, you would come back to council, and if it still wasn't something that was financially feasible to do, you could recommend to reject the bid at that time and then bring it back and put it out to bid at a later date. Is that, and is that a possibility?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Miller, we wouldn't have to reject it because we probably would not be able to bring you back a contract that's within the budget that we have set. So we would explore the details with, it's a good contractor that we've done business with, and find out maybe if we have unanticipated something.
Okay, I just, I know that I often hear the bid process gets sidelined sometimes in these, and you end up continually going to a negotiation or a CMGC, and so I just want to make sure that we have an eye on the, the public bid process here when we're talking about it.
And I would recognize the just the reality that the conditions that existed, 8 weeks ago versus now are night and day. And, probably a good chance that why we only got one bid is because none of them had time because they had so much work. And if they did put in a bid, it might be, okay, we're going to put this in really high. And if they really want to do it, we'll do that. But if we don't have to go out to anything now, like I say, it's going to be night and day different. And I would guess that, they will be very, a lot of companies will be very anxious to get a project. So I think, taking the time just makes financial sense.
I would have to add, too, that I think we have to take a look at that project to see if a police substation can be built in that area for the price that we're looking at. It could very well be that space, money-wise, just doesn't work per square foot to build a police substation. That could be. I think that's something, Captain, that you'll probably determine once you get back into some more of the details of the bid.
Yes, sir, it is.
Yeah. Any other questions from council members? So we'd be looking for council action then.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move to reject the bids for the police substation tenant improvement project at 214 North 3rd Street and direct staff to negotiate an agreement.
Second.
Motion and a second to that. Further discussion? Roll call, please, Renata.
Miller,
Yes?
McEvers,
Yes.
Gookin,
Yes.
English,
Yes.
Wood,
Yes.
Evans.
Yes.
Motion carried. Thank you, Lee. Resolution number 20-025 is approval of assignment of the contract for the Atlas Waterfront Park with LaRiviere Equipment and Excavation, Inc. to the Coeur d'Alene Urban Renewal Agency, Ignite. Mike Gridley.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So this is bringing to you a request from Ignite to transfer our construction contract to them, formally assign it to them. That would allow them to continue into some new phases of the Atlas project that weren't contemplated by this contract. And on my own time, Saturday, as a sacrifice, I went out there on the trail and walked out there, and I encourage any other citizens to take advantage and go out and walk and look at the project, what's going on. A lot of you have, I know council has, but there's still, so a lot has been accomplished, and it's really cool, but there's still a lot of earth that's trying to be recycled. There's what has been called Mount Hink, which was this big pile that nobody really knew what was there, and it was not going to be usable property. They've discovered that a lot of that can be recycled, sifted, moved around, and so that's not in this contract. In addition, Ignite is at the stage of development out there where we'll be looking at putting in streets and other infrastructure. And so they want to go ahead and be able to proceed under this contract and go forward. The city, so Ignite has been the funder of the work out there, and they'll continue to do that. The city has been inspecting and approving the work, and that will continue. So essentially, they're going to step into our shoes in this contract and continue on. So we're requesting, this is asking for the authorization to do that. There'll be some technicalities with the bonding, insurance, and some other details that we'll work out with Ignite, but that's what we're up to.
Questions for Mike? Dan?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mike, was there any specific bottleneck that's requiring this to move over from us to them?
Not that I'm aware of, other than they're getting towards the finish of the project that is the primary purpose of the underlying contract, which was the public improvements, the waterfront, and park facilities. They've been doing some work out there, it's my understanding, on the soil, the Mount Hink, trying to do all that, that isn't under contract. And so based on the analysis, or they think they can do good stuff with that, they want to proceed on with that. And so rather than go through a separate contract and create a new contract, they'd go forward with this.
Okay, the other question I have is, you mentioned streets. When they put in their streets, those are going to be up to our code, right?
Yes.
That's part of the deal? Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Any other members? Let's see, I've got a hand up there. That's Christie's hand. Christie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mike, on this contract with Ignite, so essentially it looks like they would just be the new project manager, but does that, you also kind of mentioned that we would still be involved. So will Bill Greenwood still be monitoring their progress and checking for quality control, or who's doing the quality control?
Yes, and that's part of the, behind this contract is an agreement for financing of improvements between Ignite and the city. So they've been paying for it, but they have always asserted and wanted us to approve any draws, any construction costs. It's been kind of a joint approval, but that will continue. Chris Bosley, our city engineer, and Bill Greenwood, the Parks Director, will both be involved in inspection and approving the work that goes on out there.
Okay, thank you.
Any other council questions out there in the audience? Kiki?
So, Mike, assuming then as this project comes to a close and there are change orders for unforeseen things, Ignite themselves, or will it be the city staff that will be approving those change orders, and then Ignite overseeing the budget alone? Is that what this contract transfer does?
Well, it's been, I think, a team effort, but ultimately, you're right. Ignite has been the funder, and now they will step into full funding of everything, so that if there are changes, they will be the ones funding them. Again, we will approve the work. Is it done per our code and per our desires? And then they will determine, is it work that they've specified or scoped that they want done? And assuming that, and Welch Comer has been involved with this as the project engineer also. So assuming everybody agrees, then payment would be approved by Ignite and come from Ignite funds.
So then this is solely at their discretion to spend the rest of the money on the project?
Yes. I mean, it's the same contract. We're stepping out of this contract. They're stepping into it.
Okay. And I guess I'm just looking at trying to clarify how this funding piece works, in that there was a pre-approved contract and a pre-approved budget that was going to be spent on the entire thing, and the city, partnering with Ignite, was moving forward with that funding, and now it's Ignite overseeing the spending alone.
Right. The contract specifies the contract documents, and that includes, all the work to be done. And so the work isn't going to change as far as what we've contracted for now. It's just they may add additional work, or they anticipate adding additional work to be done.
Which will be paid for with Ignite funds?
Yes.
Okay.
So I guess I had a follow-up to Kiki's then, Mike, is that, so we have an approved plan that the city approved for the park project. I would think that if there are any changes to that plan, that would again come back to this body for approval. So Ignite is going to be managing the contract, of which all of the work is specified in the contract. If there are any changes to that contract, I would think that it would come back to council for approval, right? I mean, Ignite is the funder for a park project done for the city on city property.
Right.
We're in essence the owner, and the owner would approve any changes to that park project.
Yeah, and I think, obviously, we've worked closely, council, we have you, Mayor, and Councilmember English are on the board. So I think they're working closely together, but the contract is, for the work is the same. You know, the question of now that they have it, could they radically change it and throw it away? That's something that I suppose they could attempt to do, but I think the work is getting close to completion, and they anticipate completing the work per this contract, but they want to be able to extend it to do additional work.
So I guess that additional work, is that additional work that the council has seen? I mean, again, we're the owner, and I would think that any changes to that would come back to the owners to say, yes, that's what we would like to do.
And that's a good point. You know, we can certainly discuss that with them. Coming down the pipe also is ultimately a transfer of this property to Ignite as they go through the development process. Or the plan is they've advanced the money, $7 million approximately, to do the improvements out there that we've asked, the park improvements and other improvements. We're going to transfer, the intent is the city will transfer the property to Ignite, then they're able to sell it off to be developed, and that is the funding to repay the $7 million, plus the city's expenditures. So, yeah, we remain the owner. At some point in time, we're going to come to you and say, Ignite is requesting we transfer ownership to them.
We'll retain ownership of all of the public property, the park.
Right,
and
the waterfront.
The ownership transfer would go from the city then to anyone that is doing the private development.
Right, but it would go through Ignite.
Right.
They have the ability to deal with private developers, individuals, to dispose of the property more easily. And they've gone through a request for proposal process, and
so that would be my only concern, is I would like to see some language somewhere that says that any changes from that contract then would need to come back to council for approval. That's just my thinking. Woody?
we can certainly do that. I mean, this is just part of the process of assigning it, getting authority to assign it the details, and that's a detail we could certainly put in there.
Okay.
Along those same lines, Mayor, being a TV head, I've seen presentations from the developers and stuff to Ignite and Parks and Rec. Well, that only covers not quite half the council. So I don't know if those presentations come forward to council, or is Ignite gets one and Parks and Rec gets one and they can ask questions. We don't seem to be included in that sometimes. So I'm just kind of questioning, is it coming our way? And kind of along your lines is, do we have a say as things change? Do we have a say as things move forward? So just.
And I think that Mike, all of that moved through the process. It moved through the planning commission,
Right.
And so council has seen it, the plan, but I don't know how all of that works to tie it to the very end.
So maybe an update from Ignite to tell you what's going on would be good. And I haven't been directly involved in it, but I know they have gone through the request for proposal process. They've awarded to some developers a portion of the property, and they're working out details on that. Again, that will involve us transferring ownership, not of the waterfront, not of the park, but of the property that will be developed to Ignite, so that they can transfer it to the developers. And I don't recall what has been presented to council. I know there has been a lot of presentations and work with consultants and engineers and everybody trying to figure out what's the highest and best use, or the best use for that property for the community. So maybe an update for everyone.
Yeah, and that's a good point, Woody, maybe we could probably arrange for, at our next council meeting, to get an update on all of that process. Kiki, you had another question.
I guess that was my question. Is time of the essence here, or can we just table this item to the next meeting when we could get an update from Ignite to explain the intricacies of the transfer of the contract and how that affects the closing of the contract, including change orders in cash items and or physical items that might be done before we actually have to vote on transferring this?
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that question. I know that they want to continue to do work out there, and they're doing work, the contractor's doing work that really isn't within the scope of this contract. So whether 2 weeks makes a difference, I can't answer that question, but I know they want to keep going.
Well, what this contract is just a transfer from the city of Coeur d'Alene to Ignite for management of the contract. The work doesn't change. So
Right.
any approval tonight is not going to change any work if we put in what our motion is, that we would like to approve any changes to the contract.
The work, as I understand it, the work they want to do is in addition to what's in this contract. So they want to add on dirt work and other work that the contractor is mobilized, ready to go, set up to go, but it really isn't in this contract. There's no provisions for that work.
And Mr. Mayor, that's kind of my point, is that now we're transferring the contract with change order control, changing the contract itself by the scope of work and the dollars spent on it from what was agreed to. If they're already doing work that wasn't in the contract, then we're already having Ignite make decisions on work that wasn't what we had originally agreed on. So if 2 weeks doesn't make a difference, I'd sure like to hear the details of that before we vote to give them this control.
Well, I don't want to oversell what they've been doing. If you've been to the site, there's just big piles of unknown stuff, and they've been poking around and doing that, working with our engineers, working with city staff, and now they discovered that there may be better uses for it. I think the contractor kind of took it on his own to try and figure that out, and so I think they want to go forward with that. So I don't want to leave the impression that the contractor's been doing tons of work out there without or beyond the authority or the scope of work.
And Mr. Mayor, I think that's typical when you come to the close of any kind of a big contract like that. There's loose ends and details and things that just make sense to take care of and finish up while you're on site. But I know that we've been through this. I've been through this before, and you get to the end of the job, and then there's a balancing change order that just fixes everything that had already been pre-approved. And I think this is a little unique in that it's two partners working on this. And so if 2 weeks, I'm still of a mind that if 2 weeks doesn't make a difference, that's extremely impactful. And if there's not dramatic amounts of work going on there, then it seems like it wouldn't be of grave harm that we take a look at what the actual details of these changes and dollar amounts might be.
Yeah, and it could very well be that there's some unanswered questions tonight, that maybe this is something that needs to be tabled for 2 weeks, if it can be, so we can get answers to those questions as to what those changes may be. See, well, we'll go to one of our Zoomers. We'll go to Christy, and then we'll come back to Dan.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Christy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. I tend to agree with Kiki, and then also I think Mike would have time to answer that question on whether any change would first be approved by council. I don't think 2 weeks will hold up anything, and seems better to have all the answers. And so I like the idea of tabling it.
Dan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I was just going to say the same thing. If Kiki wanted to make a motion, I would second the motion. Thank you.
So, Mr. Mayor, I would make a motion that we table the assignment of the contract to the Appalachia Waterfront Park to Ignite for 2 weeks.
And I will second that if you were going to add to it that there would be a presentation from Ignite before we make our decision.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
So we have a motion and a second. Mike, do you have enough direction to go back to Ignite? I guess what we're asking for is, so we're going to assign this contract, and please, anyone, correct me if I speak incorrectly, but so we're transferring this contract over to Ignite, assuming that everything in this contract is going to move forward, everything that we've approved. So that's kind of where we're at, and that we would like to see any changes to that contract would need to come back to council. So is that correct?
And I think that, you know, it may be that it could be that there's some cost savings or some things that, you know, they have just kind of been doing a great job out there and maybe have come up with new ideas since the start of the award of the contract with what maybe could happen with Mount Hink. That could all be well and good, but I'd just like to hear what's going on and what is happening with these end of project items before we transfer that. So that presentation would be very much appreciated.
Any other discussion from council? Any council members have anything? I'm looking for any waves out there. Dan, English.
Yeah, I would add some background because, as was mentioned, I serve on Ignite as well as the council. And so, you know, have some probably more immediate sense of things. But, you know, as a couple of examples of what the contractor is doing, which is actually to Ignite's benefit and therefore to the city's benefit, because if it costs less to do this whole thing, and when we sell a property, you know, there will be more left over, which is a good thing. But like with the Mount Hank, there was a lot of money in the contract to have to bring fill into certain portions of the project where basically the dirt wasn't deep enough. And he figured out on his own that, oh yeah, we could get enough out of Mount Hink to do some of that. And they did that. And then also they've added like some fill in another area where, oh wow, we're gonna pick up, you know, some more building lots, which again is a benefit to the project. And when we took our tour for Ignite, you know, actually at the time, they pointed out a number of things, and that, oh, if the, you know, existing contractor could do certain things because they're there, they've got their equipment and all of that, again, that would be to our financial advantage. So, you know, I appreciate that, you know, not everybody, you know, is on the same level of that. You know, I will say that for anybody, you know, council or otherwise, who is interested, you know, at every one of the Ignite meetings, a regular portion is from the engineer to give a, you know, quite detailed, you know, synopsis of what's going on. And if you've watched some of those, you know, boy, it is a work in progress, and they've changed a lot of things over time, and, you know, to refine it, make it better. And so, I think we're all heading in the same direction, and I don't, you know, I certainly don't have a problem with, you know, saying, yeah, well, let's go back and, you know, wait for 2 weeks and, you know, get some more confidence on the council. But I just wanted to share that background.
Dan, anyone else have any comments on the motion? So the motion, and it's been seconded, is to table this decision until our next council meeting to get more information. Any other discussion? Renata, would you like a roll call or voice vote there?
Right,
Roll call, please.
Probably easier. Okay, McEvers,
Yes.
Gookin,
Yes.
English,
Yes.
Wood,
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
Miller.
Yes?
Motion carried.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mike. The fourth item on here is a discussion regarding the COVID-19 policies and recommendations on staff. Melissa is with us tonight.
Yes, good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm here this evening to get your recommendation moving forward on how to look at our current leave and pay policies that are specific to the COVID-19 pandemic right now. So when the governor put out his stay-at-home order on March 25th, we had put out a specific COVID-19 policy the following day that addressed some of our continued operations, prevention of the virus, flexible work schedules, telework options, and towards the end of it had some paid leave options. So at the time, there was so much information that was coming out, we needed to put something out to employees that were affected from that stay-at-home order. Majority of our employees are public safety, so they're obviously critical staff. We have essential employees that our IT department has worked really hard to give them options to work from home. And then we have a smaller group of what we defined as Category 3 employees that didn't really have the opportunity to telework. And they might not have work available depending on weather or just inconsistent duties. So in that policy, we addressed all three of those groups. We agreed that for the benefited employees that we would just continue through April 15th and bring the discussion to the council meeting tonight and continue to pay them as they were working if they were able to. And then there was the non-benefited employees that, as you can see in the staff report, the majority of them are library employees, but we do have some employees in our police department, but they're able to continue working. Many of them are working outside and have duties that let them continue to do those duties. And for the non-benefited employees, we had said that they would continue to receive pay through March 31st. And then the rest of the teleworking employees that had the ability to do that were just working at home. And again, IT made that opportunity available to them, and many of them can do it at home, knowing that this is going to be hopefully a temporary situation, and now it looks like we're going through the end of April. So that was I had a lot of information in my staff report as options, and I'm not going to go through all of those in detail, but many things are changing. Information is coming out every day on different the stimulus packages, and since I wrote the staff report, I've been in touch with the Department of Labor quite a bit, asking quite a few questions with them. The CARES Act information had came out from that stimulus package, and there is an expanded unemployment stimulus within the unemployment and the CARES Act, which provides an additional $600 a week for those individuals that at least meet the minimum unemployment weekly benefit, which is $72 a week. So after looking at a lot of that information and asking a lot of questions, many of our employees that don't have the ability to telework, those Category 3 employees, might be better off by utilizing the unemployment benefit, the weekly benefit, with addition to the CARES Act stimulus for the $600 a week. So with all those options, we do need to update the COVID-19 policy that would, if we're moving forward with furloughs, that would allow us to leave the employees' current accruals on the books. A furlough allows the ones that are benefited just to continue with their health insurance. So it's really a unpaid leave of absence. And then as soon as everything gets back to business as normal, we would just rehire those employees and they would come back as before they left. I try to put as much information in the staff report as possible for your consideration. I included the Library Board of Trustees recommendation for their staff. They had a meeting on March 25th, so I just wanted to make sure that you had their recommendation of pay. So as of Friday, we did go ahead and move forward with furloughing some of the library staff since the library is closed. So the library has 29 positions and 22 of those employees were furloughed.
So Melissa, just a quick question, is that everything that we have researched shows that, and I know this sounds too good to be true, and most of the times when it's too good to be true, it isn't true, right? But everything that we see out there and all the questions that you've asked of the Department of Labor, of all the research that we've done online with the federal government shows that the employees will get, furloughed employees will get their weekly benefit plus $600 a week up till, it goes all the way till July 31st is the end of that. Most all, and maybe all of our furloughed employees will make more money being on furlough than they would be working. Again, that sounds too good to be true, but according to all of our research, all the questions that you've done, that's what you see.
Yeah, the extra $600 weekly benefit is really a game changer when you're talking about how the employees are going to be taken care of. From my conversations with the Department of Labor, they felt that the CARES Act was put together so fast that they probably didn't really think of having some sort of sliding scale or some sort of prorated amount. I asked that question numerous times because it does seem like a lot, a weekly benefit of that much. And the information that I got back was, you maybe look at it as it's also stimulating our economy. Those individuals are spending the money out in hopefully some of our local establishments, but they really didn't feel that it was going to be prorated in any way. That the main criteria was that they were meeting the minimum weekly benefit of unemployment.
And it applies to part-time employees. All they had to do is meet that $72 a week of benefits.
Right.
To qualify for the $600 a week benefit.
Right, and I looked at a part-time 20-hour position that was making about $15 an hour. So they make $280 gross per week with the city. So after calculating their unemployment benefit, that puts them at about $142 a week. So if they're working, they're making $280. If they're on unemployment, they're making $142. So then you add the $600, then they're $742 a week compared to the $280 that they are as they're actually working. So we felt that it was a really good option for those employees. And the other piece that the unemployment office said that, they are working with updating and implementing their software to make this happen because they'll have 2 different payments per week for the people that are eligible. And I just lost my train of thought.
So one other question, Melissa. So we have worked with and provided information for anyone that's furloughed on the procedure to get signed up through the Idaho Department of Labor.
Yes. So Betty contacted her staff in the library, and they're working through that, and HR has addressed a lot of their questions, but yeah.
So they're financially going to be taken care of, and like you said, hopefully they will get a little bit more, and I think that it was intended to be a bit of a stimulus for the people that are at the lower end of their earnings.
And my train of thought that I lost was the Department of Labor said that as they're working through their software to get it implemented, once they start paying that out, if the employee is on unemployment, that they will go back and pay those weeks retro. So the employees that are on unemployment as of the 1st of April, if the Department of Labor doesn't get to paying that weekly amount out till April 15th, they'll still go back, and those employees, as long as they're on unemployment the 1st of April, they'll still receive that $600 a week. So we could wait and have done that later, but then they would miss out on that opportunity.
Is that your whole presentation, Tiffany?
That's all I
Open it up
got.
for questions. Okay, questions from council. Woody?
Oh, boy, this is crazy. Does this work for us and our restaurant folks?
It does, for
Okay.
our restaurant employees,
Okay.
yeah.
It's just, it seems strange when workers that are working get paid, workers that are not working get paid. Is it, you make more money working, or do you make more money not working?
Well, that's what it appears. I did ask the question that when we open our doors again, we would like them to come back, because obviously some might not want to if they're making more. And if we have work available for the individual, they are required to come back. Or if they choose not to, their unemployment would at that point get denied if we have work for them. So
that's
it's
what-
just kind of we have never furloughed employees before, so it's kind of uncharted territory, but at the same time, we're in this pandemic of unknown that the government is putting this out to help, and so the timing of it all does help those even more so than what they would normally receive. So it is very unusual.
So you're asking us to decide what is the question?
Yes,
Whether
that
we
is a
want to
good
go
question.
with that program, just do the furlough and.
Well, when I wrote the staff report, we weren't quite there yet. So we did start that process on Friday, but we do need to update the COVID-19 policy that we wrote at the end of March, and we need to write some of that furlough language in there. I think that if there are other departments that are looking at those Category 3 employees, and as we move forward, and depending on how long this is extended, we may have other employees that might fall under this recommendation. So I think part of council's recommendation would be that if we have employees that really don't have the ability to telework, or their duties outside are, they don't have enough, that we look at those employees being furloughed as well.
Any other questions, any hands up out there in Zoom land?
Hello.
Kiki, go ahead.
I'm not doing very well with my hand raising efforts here. I have a couple questions, and I had, just to share with council, I had sent a long email to the mayor and Melissa about some questions I had, because I had been looking at what some other states are doing, and I really felt like this was, I think it made us all kind of raise our eyebrows that a person who had a job making $280 with unemployment and this stimulus would be making $750. So it left me thinking, well, why would they come back? And the answer is they're required to come back, but if they don't come back, is it going to push all those hours onto another employee so that the city is then actually, are they even, would be one of the questions. And then I would hate to have I'm hoping that there is some sort of ongoing tracking and communication, and I'm assuming that it's, as it changes daily, Melissa, you're doing this, but I would hate to see these employees get left in the lurch. So should something come up that says, yes, if you got, an extended amount over your normal or your normal wage, not just the difference from your unemployment up to what your normal wage would be, 142 to 280, but you got this big windfall of, Corona cash that you now have to pay it back in your tax return or some odd thing like that. So I'm just hoping there's some ongoing monitoring so that there isn't, as these things change, we don't let someone get caught into a really bad situation with this kind of unusual circumstance. And then my last thing was, in some of these programs out there, the city gets, or the company owner gets reimbursed later. And how is that working with the city in this whole stimulus package? Is that something that this money, is this all through Idaho Department of Labor? None of it's coming out of the city except for the wages that they were paid up until the end of March. And then the rest of it is all unemployment through the federal stimulus and not the city waiting for reimbursement.
Yes, so
A lot of questions,
the,
sorry.
that's okay. The hours through the end of March, if the employee was not able to work, we coded that in a way that we could track that in an effort to get reimbursed for it later. The windfall amount, as far as the employer's responsibility, we are a cost reimbursable employer with the Department of Labor. And so we're just responsible for the unemployment side of it. So the extra $600, there's still federal guidelines coming out, so I can't really answer the tax side of that. But as far as the employer side, we're not required and have no liability on the CARES Act amount, only on the unemployment side.
And
I'm so sorry.
I was just
So
going to say,
Melissa,
and to add to that, on the reimbursement from the federal government has to be COVID related. So if someone was quarantined or some reason like that where the city was paying them, you could submit those dollars. If someone is simply furloughed, those are not reimbursable dollars to the city. Right? That's correct, Troy? Yeah. Kiki, I'm sorry I interrupted. You had another question there.
No problem. I just am trying to, make sure as we walk through this that we get a clear picture, as clear as it can be up to the date of what the city and the especially what the employees' risk situation might be. So it sounds like if we're moving forward with this direction right now, as long as we have some good monitoring in place, and I think as long as we are assuring that these employees are going to be well informed if something does change with this situation, so that they don't get into get caught in a bad financial picture. I think that it's great for them that there's a way that they can be taken care of through this.
And I think the rules for the unemployment is as long as they qualify for unemployment through the state of Idaho, and they're getting $72 a week or more through July 31st, as long as they're furloughed, they are eligible for that $600 benefit.
That's my understanding.
And these furloughed people don't have to work, or they do have to work? I'm not sure if I got that piece done.
If
Or
they're
they don't
asked,
have to
well,
work at all.
again, they're following unemployment guidelines. If you come back to work, if you're asked to come back to work and you say, no, I don't want to, then you aren't eligible for unemployment.
Gotcha.
Right, and continued to stay informed. The library director is very close with her staff, and I'm happy to work with her. And as I have a better understanding of the CARES Act, and as additional regulations come out, I'm happy to work with her and keeping staff involved in any communication piece. To answer one other of your questions, once Congress approved that and it was signed into law, that was pushed to the Department of Labor. And then the Department of Labor pushes it to all the state Department of Labors. And then at that point, it's their job to implement it through their process to start paying it. So it is solely through the Department of Labor. There's nothing being done through the city side. The employee that is receiving their weekly benefit through unemployment will also receive a separate $600. So it's all tied through the State Department of Labor once they start paying it.
And there has been some challenges with the Idaho Department of Labor. They've just been overwhelmed with the numbers of applications. And so there has to be a little bit of persistence to get through. But I think that there have been several successful cases. A majority of them right now are receiving unemployment. There still may be some issues. And I think, Melissa, you and your staff are happy to work with all the employees to iron out any of those issues. Christy, you had something out there.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to add that when Congress brought forward this legislation and then it was signed into law by the president, it seems to me the entire intention was to get people to stay home. And what they're trying to do is make people as whole as possible, because generally unemployment, you only make a portion of what you normally would have made. So the $600 was to make up for people that are more in the mid-range, I would assume, The lower range, you know, they just happen to be in a situation, part-time workers, where they're going to get the same amount. And so it is a better option for them to take. I also think that we don't know how long this is going to go on. And when Melissa worked on these policies initially, no one knew, and we still don't know. And so it is the responsible thing for cities to do, to take advantage of a federal stimulus, because that's what it was designed for. We could find ourselves in this situation for months and having employees sitting home with no work. So I think the more responsible thing to do is to furlough them, take advantage of the federal stimulus.
Thank you. Dan, did you? No. Any other waivers out there? Looks like we have Amy.
Well, I just want to commend Melissa. Many on council know, because we've been answering questions on this and trying to figure out. It's complicated and ever changing. I've been working on this daily for the last, it seems like eons now, but daily at 7 a.m., at least the last 3 weeks with my employment, with my line of work. And Melissa, you've done a great job of sorting through the details and making sure our employees are taken care of. So I appreciate that, and I know how much work it's been.
Thank you, Amy. Anyone else have anything? So what did you?
Yes.
Dan English?
Yeah, I would just, you know, again, it is a unique circumstance, never happened before, and hopefully won't happen again. My default position would be, well, we shouldn't have, you know, what might be seen as second-class employees if they were part-time or whatever. On the other hand, that's exactly, I mean, the conditions that were put into the stimulus bill, and of course, there have been multiple stimulus bills, and they're working on another one now, and a number of them, I mean, are going to be focused on cities and making them whole. You know, and there's certainly a number of I guess I also don't like the, you know, language, especially of saying it's a windfall for them. You know, there's a lot of corporations, businesses that somebody could say, well, man, they're getting a huge windfall. So, but this isn't the time, I don't think, to put that kind of thing on there. So I think, you know, given this, I think it makes sense to basically affirm what's been done. As they got furloughed, you know, starting the 1st of April. Once they get everything in the pipeline, it'll catch them up and go from there. And then once we can call them back, if they don't want to go back, then they lose that benefit, and we're not on the hook for anything then. So, but I also think most of our folks, you know, they work for more than the money. They're going to want to get back to their work family. So anyway, I think we're on the right path.
All right, thank you. So, Melissa, what we're looking for then is a motion to approve the COVID policies that have been presented. Is that?
Yes.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I make a motion that we direct Melissa to move forward with the COVID policies as they have been presented and current to date.
Okay, so we have a motion.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All right, roll call or voice, Renata?
It's just a voice vote.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. So we have our final item under other business, and it is for the Police Department application acceptance of the Department of Justice grant for $103,457 for emergency appropriations for the coronavirus health response and agency operations. Captain Brainerd.
Yes, sir. Mr. Mayor, council members, again, the second matter I'm here to present is a request from the police department to apply for and accept a Department of Justice formula allocation grant in that amount that you mentioned, $103,457, to acquire personal protective equipment and other consumable items, laptop, equipment, tablets for our field and home use to replace and supplement our existing inventories, and then also to transition from our on-premise Microsoft Office products to a cloud-based Office 365 cloud solutions for field and home use for our computers. The history on this is fairly recent. We just learned from the Office of Justice Programs that there would be emergent funding available through the Coronavirus Emergency Supplemental Funding Program, and we were informed that we had been granted, or that we were eligible for that dollar amount, that $103,457, to continue our mitigation measures, our prevention, and our future response to future iterations or waves of this coronavirus. The financial analysis is obviously prior to this pandemic. We've needed to access we needed to have accessibility to our digital resources, but nobody foresaw the need to move off-site, to move the majority of our staff to their homes, to work from home. And so in this process, we've identified some technical complications that we've addressed. Additionally, we recognized that we had a certain number of equipment and supplies, but again, nobody foresaw that we would be going through thousands of masks and thousands of pairs of gloves and all of the personal protective equipment that we're going through on a regular basis. So the need for equipping our sworn officers to prevent being infected grew faster than our supplies allowed. We're dealing with that on a regular basis, a daily basis. We're acquiring equipment and supplies through the Office of Emergency Management through the county. Additionally, using this allocation will allow the department to continue to prevent and prepare for not only the ongoing situation, but again, to address any ongoing needs, protracted needs that we face in the future. Like was mentioned earlier, we really don't know how long this issue is going to continue, and so in addition to mitigating our current problem and addressing our current needs, this allocation will assist us in moving forward into the future. The move to Office 365, if that is approved and successful, it will solve a lot of problems related to working off-site in our secure network, but there's also a future subscription cost, which currently is estimated at $8,000 depending on the plan used and the personnel given access. The funding will allow us to purchase PPE, including gloves, eye protection, masks, robes, whatever we deem necessary in the future in our ongoing efforts. Additionally, the funds will allow us to purchase these new laptops that are capable of handling the demands of moving personnel from their desks on-site at the police department to off-site locations. Finally, the funds will allow us to lighten the need for our VPN access and hardware infrastructure by moving the Microsoft Office products from the on-premises solutions that we have in effect right now to a cloud-based, CJIS-compliant, cloud-based solution, making the work, again, of first responders completing their work off-site more nimble and resilient. So the decision point on this report is that staff is requesting that the council authorize the police department to apply for and accept the allocation of this grant in the amount of $103,457. And I would stand for questions.
Questions from Council Woody.
Boy, you guys are always killing it out there, huh? So let me ask you on this VPN cloud base, we've been getting a lot of feedback the last couple of weeks. Is that something that IT is behind? The city IT department, are they up for this cloud thing?
Well, that is something that we would certainly work with them on. We haven't addressed it. Again, we just learned about this opportunity, and in order to get this request on tonight's council agenda, we had to move quickly. So moving forward, we would engage in those conversations with the city IT staff to to ensure that that transition is handled appropriately.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Other questions of council? If there be no other questions, we'll be looking for council action.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move for approval to authorize this police department to apply for and accept a Department of Justice formula allocation grant for $103,457 emergency appropriations for coronavirus health response and agency operations.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion on that? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Sergeant. I wanted to end the meeting tonight. Troy, if you would please give us an update on the Emergency Operations Center and the things that are going on there. If you would please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, we continue to partner with a unified command center. Many of our personnel, including Captain Brainerd and our public information officers from our Coeur Fire Department, have been staffed up at the Kootenai County Office of Emergency Management. You can be very proud. That was very bad on my part. I apologize.
Great. Can't hear you.
Can't hear me at all. It's probably the best way to hear me. So again, the Office of Emergency Management, in partnership with Kootenai County and our colleagues at Panhandle Health, including Kootenai Health, continue to do great work in a unified command. There was a little article, a letter to the editor today that came after some of you great electeds, and I would like to counter that particular article and say that all of you are doing a great job by supporting a unified command. There's a lot of information out there. A lot of it is not accurate, and what we've chosen to do, based on good leadership from our Sheriff Ben Wolfinger and Kootenai County's Emergency Medical Services System Chief Chris Way, is that the information comes out on a couple of great websites. One is at Panhandle Health, and one is on Facebook.com for Kootenai County. That's where we go to get our information for Kootenai County. That's where our residents go to get their information. And that is a unified command with unified communication. That is where the mayor goes to get his information and he shares with council. And that's where our police chief goes to get the information and they go to the meetings, and that's where your fire chief goes to get the information. So as a great community, a great county, and an area that has been hurting, you all are doing a great job of assisting with accurate communication as timely as we can get it, and with a unified command and communication process. So I'd like to thank you, local elected officials, for having chiefs that are getting it done, for having paramedics that are out there delivering the services, for getting the protective equipment that you see, the dollars that are coming in. I can't say thank you enough to the team that we work with, thanking a Kootenai County Sheriff that has been more than able to be approached. I've been up there a couple of times as well. Chief Way is doing great work. So we're battling a disease that we can't see. And the forecast, although it is a disease that we're going to deal with for a while, looks like our community has done very well. So I'd like to continue to promote that, complement the process, and as your administrator asked that if there's anything that I can do, I'm more than happy to. But right now we are communicating in every way we can and speaking to facts. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Council, have any questions for Troy? I know that we daily ask questions of Troy, but would you?
Just a comment. IT has stepped up to pull off this meeting and keep everybody working at home. I can't even imagine how they did it, but I'm grateful for their support and keeping everything moving, because that's a big one. And may the cloud be with you.
So I wanted to end tonight. I think if there's one thing that we can be comforted by, it is by all of the hardworking folks at Kootenai Health And we have an incredible medical facility right here in our community. And they're ready to respond. They've been doing a great job. And I think that they've just been a tremendous asset to our community, and they will continue to be that. So I just want to thank all the healthcare professionals. Again, follow their guidelines. You know, don't listen to politicians tell you what to do. Listen to the healthcare professionals. And social distancing is working. I have nothing against anyone. I love Blaine County, Idaho, right? It's a beautiful part of Idaho. But Kootenai County does not want to be Blaine County. They have the highest per capita cases of coronavirus in the country. We don't want to be there. So it's important that we practice social distancing. It's working all over this country. We're seeing light possibly at the end of the tunnel, that the curve is flattening. We hope so. So and one of the most important things is that we have to be patient and we have to take care of each other. We maybe have to be a little nicer to each other, and then we can get through with that. Then the nicest person, and I think everyone would agree that the nicest person, and we're all nice in the city of Coeur d'Alene, but maybe the nicest person is Amy Ferguson.
Yeah.
And on every one of her emails, that's what she says. The three most important things to be is to always be nice, and she repeats it 2 more times. So I think that if we follow Amy Ferguson's lead to be nice to everyone, we follow all those other guidelines, that we'll be in pretty good shape. So with that, we'll look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
We are adjourned. Everyone stay safe.
Thanks. Good night.
Good night.